The other thing was, if you listen to that record, yes, it's got the fast and furious riffing, but you immediately hear a little bit of light and shade. There's a bit of tone there. They weren't just going straight for broke, sprinting all the way through. They knew you had to have a balance. The highs are only high if there are lows to emphasize how good those highs really are. But the fact is, it defined the genre because it was head and shoulders above the genre, not because they were the first.
I don't think Kill 'Em All is their best album, but it's, you know, it's got a spirit to it that people really identify with, and they did come fully formed. Their sound, the Metallica sound, was there from day one, so it is a really, really strong record, and there aren't many better debuts or more influential debuts than that.
But they started to get bigger and bigger, and then we did Ride the Lightning. And Ride the Lightning was a completely different situation for them. Johnny Z, by that time, had kind of run out of money. So we stepped in and said, all right, well, we'll pay to record it. And we set them up in Denmark in this little studio with Flemming Rasmussen, I think his name is. Then a few weeks went by and I hadn't heard anything, so on the phone I spoke to Lars. And he kept saying, no, everything's great, man, everything's great, we're on course, it's fantastic. And then another couple of weeks went by and I'm thinking, well, they must be, you know, getting on for finish now. So I said, have you got any roughs you can send me? Not exactly. And I thought, I don't like the sound of this. So I got on a plane to Denmark. And the first thing I discovered was that there was an elephant beer dispenser in the reception. So my suspicions were aroused immediately. And when I went in, they were still getting a drum sound. And this was 6 weeks into it. We ended up sort of kicking some ass and sort of having some conversations, etc. And then they got on with it. And so by the time Ride the Lightning was finished, it was actually a stunning record. I mean, a stunning record. And it was kind of a turning point for them and a benchmark for a lot of other bands.
Given the fact that we're talking about a year, literally, between the first Metallica album, Kill 'Em All, in 1983, and the second one, Ride the Lightning, in '84, it's astonishing what a leap they've made.
Maiden and Priest were making great albums around then, but Metallica suddenly sounded like the best metal band in the world when Ride the Lightning came out. That was the difference. And their contemporaries, which, you know, Megadeth and Slayer and Anthrax, were just getting started at that point. And Metallica were kind of going, bye.
They had grown into their reputation, and straight away, as with all leaders of a genre, they superseded it. They outgrew it.
Ride the Lightning was, it sounded as if it had been recorded by a completely different band. They used a professional studio. They went to Sweet Silence in Copenhagen, where Rainbow and a couple of other big rock bands had recorded. They liked the sound that those bands had achieved at this studio. And then they had this producer, Flemming Rasmussen, who runs the studio there, who really, really knew his stuff. So, coupled with the fact that they'd matured as songwriters and they'd written these amazing songs, which were incredibly precise and a lot more progressive and complex, and then they had a really good production as well, when you compare the two records side by side, they sound completely different.
Metallica always had the thrash element in the 80s, but they added different light and shade, different diversity, different styles. They did an instrumental, Call of Cthulhu, on Ride the Lightning. But most important, they did Fade to Black. And I remember just before Ride the Lightning came out, they just finished the album, interviewing James Hetfield and Lars Ulrich for the very first time in London, talking about the album, which I hadn't heard at the time. And James saying, we've done a ballad. And then he looked to the ceiling and said, I don't know how our fans are going to take to us doing a ballad. It's not really what they want from us, is it? But we've done a ballad, and we're very proud of it. And Lars actually was a lot more bullish, saying, you know what, this is Metallica. If they're Metallica fans, will understand what it's all about. It's still intense, it's still heavy, it's just not super fast. So immediately, you had this Metallica do a ballad shock? What is this? Have they gone folk?
It's hard to imagine Metallica recording a song called, like Fade to Black on Kill 'Em All. At that point, I think if anyone had suggested, let's do a song that has really prominent acoustic guitars at the beginning, and it's a kind of meditation on suicide and, you know, misery and all the rest of it, that couldn't have happened on the first album, because they were still going, yeah, we're a fucking metal band, come on! And on Ride the Lightning, they were still doing that, but they'd grown up just enough to be able to get away with doing something like that.
Back then, in 84, extreme metal bands weren't writing anything remotely that would fall into the sort of rock power ballad category. And although it isn't really what you call a ballad, it certainly has a little quiet bit, which was people weren't really expecting. Quite a lot of quiet.
I think they did. I don't think even now any other band can do ballads the way Metallica do them. I mean, a lot of bands do ballads and it just sounds totally cheesy, but Metallica do it still sounds heavy, you know what I mean, and emotional in a good way.
And the thing is, because it's still quite raw as well, at that time before James Hetfield's actually, like, his vocals get, not that his vocals are, but his vocals are good on it, but before he's obviously come into like big time producers, and they've made his vocals sound so much better, and he's got vocal lessons and whatever, or anything like that, and it's excellent, you know what I mean, it keeps it that raw vein sounding really good.
When they play Fade to Black, when you hear it on the record, when you see them play it live, they're not crying into their beers over a girl that dumped them. I mean, it's that kind of sort of, you know, fist held to the chest kind of manly sadness, you know, just when you sort of cough and light a cigarette and just get on with your day sort of thing, you know. It's a very kind of macho kind of sadness, you know, because I mean it's still very powerful, you know, but the thing is James Hetfield's never bleeding in it, you know. I mean, you don't hear him just feel like he's just going to like break up into pieces or whatever. He's basically just saying that, well, you know, life is shit sometimes, you know, and that's about as far as it goes.
And the way Kirk Hammett played guitar was one of the first times you ever heard what he could do as a technician. There's a richness to this tone. He doesn't just play off the rhythm and the riff, he's playing off the chorus as well. And I think as a result, it's far more tuneful and far more enveloping and far smoother in a way than anything they had done. So this was a template very much for what they were to do even more successfully in subsequent years.
They kind of allowed themselves a freedom with their style very early on, which enabled them to do something like Fade to Black without anyone going, well, that's a bit sissy. You know, no one thought that at the time. Everyone just sat there with their jaw on the floor going, fuck me, that's one of the best things I've ever heard in my life. They could bring an atmosphere and bring a feeling to metal songs that other bands wouldn't have been able to grasp what they were doing, and I don't think it was something they sat around and thought about. It's an instinctive, intuitive thing that Metallica had. You know, they were great songwriters and great musicians, but they just had an instinctive feel for what made metal work. And in the same way that Judas Priest and Iron Maiden also had those same gifts, Metallica just took it to another level because they were just heavier, you know, and yet they could play the most delicate, lilting bit of acoustic guitar in Fade to Black, or do a really slow drop-down bit where there's hardly anything happening in Creeping Death and the crowd's going, die, die, you know, do something as simple as that. And yet it sends shivers down your spine, whereas other bands would just blast away at 100 miles an hour, and, you know, as brilliant as that can be, it's, you know, you can't argue with class, really, and Metallica had lots of class.
Little fucking death man, what'd you say?
Well, it's always been a live favourite, Creeping Death. Well, it's got that really good audience participation bit. We all know it. Die by my hand, all of that. So you get 50,000 Gumbies all giving it that all the time. It's a little bit Nuremberg rowdy, but it's pretty damn good fun.
Creeping Death combined a lot of classic metal elements. It had this amazing lyrical subject, which was the biblical plagues in Egypt, which was just fantastic. And then it had this riff in it, which was highly catchy. It wasn't quite thrash, but it certainly wasn't mainstream metal. If anything, it had more in common with Iron Maiden than other metal bands of the day, like Sabbath and